Шановні колеги, вітаємо.
Greetings, dear colleagues. I'm Tarasenko, Deputy Executive Director of the Renaissance Foundation. Our briefing is dedicated to the event that took place a few days ago. That is situation in Loschynivka. This event, besides security concerns, major freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution of Ukraine, and that is why this issue is very sensitive. Because I also would like to invite Mr. Grigory Nemira, the head of Committee on Human Rights of Верховна Рада України. Thank you. Good morning. I was given the floor. And I will talk about the problem. And the problem is human rights and tragedy in Loschynivka. The events taking place now, they have just demonstrated the problem that has been existing in the country. Only now there is a chance to draw attention of the public, of public institutions, of the government to that, and we need to think what is to be done to reduce the risk of repeating this in the future. The Romas have been one of the most vulnerable minority. That is nothing new. What is new? The war in the east of Ukraine has worsened the situation according to the UN and the Committee on Human Rights. About 6,000 Romas had to leave their places of residence in the zone of conflict, and now they are in different places of Ukraine. We also need to draw attention to the commitments of Ukraine taken by Ukraine. The main incentive for Ukraine to take these commitments was execution of the action plan on liberalization of visa regime. When the first stage of this the action plan was being completed, the European Union demanded from Ukraine to pass the strategy on Romas and the action plan at the level of the government. That was done at the end of 2013. In November last year, the government set up the inter-ministerial committee group, which was coordinating all this work. This is not just our external commitment, but the events that are taking place in a village in the south of Ukraine, they are not insulated, and they should not be considered as an insulated event. Of course, those who committed the crime are to be punished. But it would be a mistake to be satisfied with that, unless the steps are made which will reduce the probability of such things happening in the future. This could be repeated again and again, but no one knows in what conditions and with what consequences. As the Human Rights Committee, at one of our meetings, we will discuss the issue of we will discuss this situation. This will be one of the issues at our meeting of the Committee on Human Rights, and then we will invite the representatives of the Ministry of Interior, the representative of the Ombudsman or the Ombudsman, to give a chance to the public to consider that and to make conclusion on who's responsible for that. The next step that will be initiated by the committee, because in the end of this year, this will be the first time when the government is reporting to Verkhovna Rada and Ukrainian people on executing the strategy on human rights that was approved last year. So one of the aspects of this report should be the analysis of the situation with following the rights, executing the rights of national minorities and the situation with the mostly vulnerable community, Roma community. Thank you. Let's give the floor to all the speakers, and then you will have a chance to ask questions. Now, Aksana Filipishyna from the Office of the Ombudsman, the office that has been following the situation. Good afternoon, esteemed participants of the press conference. I would like to emphasize certain things. Ukraine is the member of numerous international documents that it exceeded, that it joined, and according to them, Ukraine does not recognize any type of discrimination. Following the UN Convention on liquidating all forms of racial the situation in Loschynivka, well, we've been following it because we clearly state our position as to the situation of Romas in Ukraine, as to the position of the state that it has to take in respect to Romas, but because in fact the situation in Loschynivka opened the Pandora box. If it is not closed, then this situation then this situation will deteriorate. Such actions against this or that minority, according to Ombudsman, are not permissible. Talking about responsibility, every citizen of Ukraine or a person who stays at the territory of Ukraine should clearly not just understand but be convinced that there is a punishment for any crime, irrespective of against who the crime has been committed or who has been the perpetrator. Only the law should become the point from which, until which,
події і не
should be the major important thing. What happened in Loschynivka, our representative went to Loschynivka, participated in the meetings at the level of regional administration, met with the citizens of Loschynivka, with the police there, The situation hasn't been completed. Today we have children who did not go to school on the 1st of September. They had to leave their homes. According to the Constitution of Ukraine, the education is mandatory and secondary education is mandatory. Who should be responsible for violation of the Constitution? Today we have citizens who lost their property. In fact, they have nowhere to go, and these are the questions which require answers. Today we have the community, which has a certain viewpoint, and we need to work with that. But we need to work not starting from today. We had to work 4 years ago, when the national strategy on integration of Romas to Ukrainian society was approved, when we reported to the Ministry of Culture on what was done to execute this strategy. I mean, Odessa region. There are many, many questions, but nevertheless, the Ombudsman has a clear position that we need not just to prevent such situations from happening, but there should be a clear position that there should be no violation of human rights, especially when it comes to national minorities. Thank you.
Дякую, пані Оксана. Я хочу запросити до слова пана Константина.
Kostyantyn Tarasenko, the representative of the Office of Human Rights of the National Police of Ukraine. This is a newly created institution in the National Police of Ukraine. Our department was set up, officially started working on Friday. The main task of our department is to control and monitor the human rights issues in police. As to the question that is being discussed, we have achieved agreement with Renaissance Foundation that we will create we need to create a working group of representatives of the public and national police, because we understand that there are certain threats, that similar situations may happen in other parts of Ukraine.
Певних скажімо так, направити туди певних медіаторів і
We need to send mediators there, and the national police promises to objectively investigate all the crimes committed during these events and made responsible all those who are guilty in committing crimes, irrespective of ethnic origin. We are not using the ethnical principle in our work. If a person believes that this crime has been committed on some discrimination basis, the person should state it, and the national police will be investigating this case, taking into account ethnical or any other discrimination sign. We're doing all we can. Thank you.
Константина,
Thank you, Kostyantyn. I wish a lot of success to your newly established department in the National Police. The problems in Loschynivka had raised the issue of multicultural approach and multi-ethnical societies. And that's why I would like to invite to the microphone Mr. Zisels. I would like to divide the problem into two parts. The first is the actual problem and the actual situation in Loschynivka and the systemic omissions and non-actions which persisted for 20 years. I believe that the actual problem should be resolved and regulated by the Ministry of the Interior, while the systemic problems should be analyzed by civil society organizations. We believe that what happened from this point of view could be qualified as typical pogrom and should be analyzed and in this context, the discrimination based on the ethnical prejudice is very similar to ethnical cleanings organized in Stalin's times. Moreover, the police, which had to protect personal belongings and lives and human health, they remained inactive and did nothing to prevent this. Now the Ministry of the Interior has to make some actions. Also, there are some specific people who are known who called for the pogrom, and their actions could be supported by witnesses. And again, as to those people, the Ministry of the Interior can apply active legislation, and that's it. They have to act. Now about the systemic shortcomings. Mr. Nemira mentioned that these were spontaneous actions, but they used to exist in the past. And this is because during 20 years of insufficient work in ethnic minority, as to ethnic minorities, neither the president nor the parliamentary speaker expressed no definite governmental position as to these pogroms. As for the local governor, he expressed actually anti-social position and actually supported the pogrom. Now, if you review the sociological studies, you would find that the attitude to Romes is almost at the edge of xenophobia, at the edge of discrimination, and which again proves that we have to be more proactive. 2 years ago, just after Revolution of Dignity, our organization initiated creation of the position on ethnical policies, on the ombudsman on ethnical policy or ethnical issues in Ukraine. And unfortunately, this was not implemented into practice, and we observed that against that background of war and economic crisis, the situation with ethnical minorities and discrimination is worsening. And now we encourage those people from the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Economy, Ministry of the Regional Development, and other ministries involved to make real decision on these issues. Now we have the problem not just with Roma, we have issues with other ethnic minorities, and we have to resolve those problems in order to prevent such outbursts as we had here. I would like to give the floor to Volodymyr Kondur, head of the Coalition of Romani Organization Strategy 2020. Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to make official statement on behalf of the Coalition of Roma Organizations. First of all, we would like to thank to the OSCE and UNDP experts, representatives from the civil society, and Secretariat of the Ombudsman and the International Renaissance Foundation for the efforts to support the Roma communities. The second, we would like to state that what happened in Loschynivka prove about discrimination on behalf of the governmental authorities as to Roma. The Roma community would like to appeal to the President of Ukraine and to the Parliament of Ukraine to implement the international obligations taken by Ukraine related to the integration of Roma to society. Also, we would like to point out that the legislation should be improved in order to prevent discrimination in practice for the future. Ukraine currently is undergoing the process of reform, which might considerably change the governance manner in the country, and it is very important for the state to have a well-developed institutional structure mechanism allowing to prevent discrimination. And also there should be efficient corrective mechanism to protect the rights of ethnic minorities. Also, we would like to apply to the government about establishing position of the ombudsman on Roma issues under ombudsman or under the presidential administration, thus to have a representative of Roma community in the power. Roma people have big respect to the culture, language, and other specific ethnic features of Ukrainian people and other ethnic groups in Ukraine, because we are peaceful ethnic group. As an activist in human rights, I would like to add that we are ready to contribute maximum efforts in order to restore justice in this situation, and to allow those 7 families which suffered from this injustice to understand that this is the country where the rule of law is respected and that they are not neglected. I also would like to suggest the following. Our parliamentary committee could initiate the committee hearings if we find support from the Minorities Association, from the Renaissance Foundation, etc. And those parliamentary hearings could be devoted to successes in integration of Roma to Ukrainian society, etc. And parliamentary hearings could be organized within rather short period, like 6 weeks, for example. Yevhen Bystrytsky, Executive Director of the International Renaissance Foundation. I'm happy that we brought here all those people who are involved into looking for solution. I would like to state that Roma ethnic group is the least protected in Ukraine. They do not have their native country beyond the territory of Ukraine. Roma, actually, they follow the very specific way of life everywhere in Europe. This month we will commemorate 75th anniversary of Baben Yar, and Roma representatives also were involved in that strategy. Today, here in this room, we have well-known representatives of Roma community today. We have Zola Kondur, we have Maniak, and here today, Zola Kondur is chairman of the Chirikli organization, which deals with the Roma mediation. Olga Churko, who more than 20 years is working in the Roma organization. We have been supporting all those programs for 20 years. Of course, we observe big progress among Roma communities in terms of education, in terms of self-organization based on democratic principles. And this is true not just about the leaders of Roma communities, but about Roma youth, Roma young people who obtained medical, teachers' education, and now work in their communities. Of course, the unique character of Roma culture and unique way of life of Roma communities should be preserved, of course, but the successful representatives of Roma nationality, they can support the success, or they can propagate the success of Roma integration. I'm a bit surprised with the insufficient measures taken by local authorities to streamline the situation in the legal sphere. As far as I know, there are MPs who stay in the who stay on site, and I do not know whether their actions are positive or successful. I fully support Joseph Zissels that the legal position of the governor of Oblast remains unclear. I personally know Mykhailo Saakashvili, and I was a bit surprised to hear his statement. Actually, he put charges to Roma community in general, and this is unacceptable in Ukraine. In Ukraine, we do not have good culture in well-developed culture as to the in attitude to those communities which lead their specific way of life. As of today, Renaissance Foundation is ready to develop the mediation action plan for the region. We have good contacts with the Roma communities, with MPs, with other stakeholders. I believe that in result of this bad situation, we should make a clear statement and a call for the authorities to stop thinking about worsening of situation and about continuing these pogroms. Of course, the image of Ukraine is undermined. The international community paid more attention to what's going on here than representatives of the Ukrainian authorities. This raises a lot of concerns because it puts into doubt the capacity of the local of the authorities here in Ukraine. And eventually, I would like to say that continuing to support initiatives for Roma, we will reach the harmonious cohabitation of all ethnic minorities here in Ukraine. Thank you. Before transferring to Q&A session, I would like to invite Mr. Mykhailo Tarakhkalo, who is representative of Ukrainian Helsinki Union in Ukraine. The Helsinki Union will support those who suffered in result of the conflict. We will provide lawyers for them. The events which happened obtained very negative assessment on behalf of our organization, and nevertheless, we should understand why local residents showed such a negative attitude to Romas. And what remains unclear, how local residents got an information who is a suspect in the case, and what caused the negative reaction. This should become the subject of investigation. The second aspect, absolute non-action of police in course of all that public disorders. The police officers participated in pogroms. That video tapes, video recording, which we saw, they show how policemen entered the houses of those who organized that pogroms and had discussions with them. Then there are people who organized that pogroms and participated in them. Unfortunately, as of today, I'm not sure what measures police is applying, and whether there is any investigation. We request for transparent investigation and to bring in of all the accused to responsibility.
Also, payment of compensation to those who became victims. In this case, they have to receive the compensation from the state. This situation is a consequence, as we believe, of full inactivity of authorities, and also the question to mass media that also played a negative role. Our media do not follow the presumption of innocence when the person who's not guilty in a crime, but it's informed that the person who committed crime was detained. And I believe that in this case we need to conduct a very detailed investigation, but exclusively individual responsibility is important.
And also there should be the responsibility of other people who are not involved into the conflict. And of course this should be discussed not just at the level of mediation, but also law enforcement agencies should express their position in well-defined way. Now, dear colleagues, please raise your hands. Please, very briefly, we are very limited with the time in general. Please do not forget to mention your names. Alexander Naiman, Anti-Discrimination Committee of Ukraine. Thank you for the opportunity to ask questions. Is my understanding correct that by now nothing is done to punish those who organized those pogroms, and nothing has done as to the police officers involved, and whether any measures are taken against Saakashvili? I think that in many statements we saw that the work is done as to this.
As to punishing those who are guilty, there were criminal cases filed on the murder and pogrom, and the court will pass a decision whether those who are guilty are to be made judicially responsible. Our department has sent one person to Odessa region, and this week we hope another person will go, and they will be assessing the actions of the police. And then we will inform the public after the investigation is completed. Talking about Saakashvili, I would like to answer. He made politically incorrect statements, and that is not that people are to be taken to court for. My question is to Kostyantyn Tarasenko. We are saying that it's about pogrom at the national level. Is there any algorithm on how the national police should act? There's a algorithm of investigation of such cases. As to prevention, when there was the presentation of our department, our objective was to develop the action plan actually we are starting our work on developing the specific algorithm of actions. The investigators have an algorithm of investigation.
Питання до пана Володимира.
And my second question to Volodymyr Kondur. Josip Zisels mentioned some data that there is a certain attitude to Romas. Why does the population of Ukraine has this attitude to Romas? We can say the same in respect to other ethnic minorities. And I believe that those who want to start the inter-ethnical conflict, well, we can find any basis for that, but once we are talking about the culture of citizens, about ethnical, national culture, about human relations, I believe that any action made by a person against another person, if the human rights are violated, such actions are to be punished. Unfortunately, everything we see today is related to the fact that neither police nor the local authorities have not have not done anything to prevent such situations. We have always been offering to cooperate so that such things are eradicated. As to the mechanisms, there are many of them, and we are ready to become experts in mediation and in education. The example, there is an institution in November 2015, the resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers 993 created the working group in the Cabinet of Ministers on issues of coordination, of execution of action plan as to the strategy of integration of Romas to into Ukraine. Well, this is an example when something is created but it doesn't work. So first, this group had to organize a meeting, and the instructions were to be made to coordinate the activities and so that if the support of the center is needed, then it should interfere. Now we will look at what is this working group, whether it's operating or not, and that is the biggest threat. It will be considered as an insulated incident. I have mentioned that was the requirement of the European Union as to the action plan on liberalization of visa regime. We don't have the visa-free regime in Ukraine, but even if it is implemented, it will be in parallel, accompanied by the safeguard measures. What design case if the situation in this or that country, including Ukraine, gets the signs that the decisions which were made to receive the visa-free regime are not working, any types of direct and indirect discrimination, then there will be the ground to suspend the action of the visa-free regime plan. This is not about certain locality, about certain participants. It should be, it's needed to correct the whole system, which is not working now. If you allow, I would like to also join this answer to your question as to the model of behavior of Romas, whether they help to change the attitude to Romas in the country. The Roma community is a special community because of many reasons. But mostly what influences the situation with Romas are stereotypes, are prejudices with which we are not fighting, and the strategy that has been mentioned had in a few words had to help the situation to improve. The Roma society is closed because of many reasons, not just because the society does not accept Roma community, but also because the society is not doing anything for Roma community to open. I went to all children's detention communities of Ukraine. There was not a single Roma child there. We visit other facilities, but nevertheless, if you see the information on committing some crime, you will not hear the information that that crime was committed by Russian, Ukrainian, Crimean Tatar, Bulgarian, but if it is Roma person, then they write that the Roma guy is suspected or stole something. And there were surveys made. We see the rulings of the court where the ruling mentions the nationality, and that is the only Roma nationality. So we would like to draw attention, if Romas are doing something wrong, then we need to look for reasons not in Romas, but in what the rest of the society is doing, so that Romas are getting integrated as soon as possible. Any other questions?
Very short question and then final comments. I'm Gomulensky, Cossack TV. It seems to me that this is not objective communication, but prejudiced. I've been studying minorities in Russia and the Ukraine for many years, and I cannot understand who Roma is. Why you do not but
Дійсно, за
why you do not try to resolve the issues of Roma? We spend a lot of money to integrate them to society. Do you know what percentage of Roma community members try to integrate to Ukrainian society? Of course, when a Ukrainian and a Roma representative commit some offenses, they're detained, then Roma is allowed to go and Ukrainian is detained and punished. Now about the question should be, what is the name? In 1971, there was International Congress of Roma community, where we adopted our national flag, hymn, and the ethnic group officially is called Roma. As you mentioned about offenses, some incidents that Ukrainians are allowed to go while Romas are allowed to go while Ukrainians are punished. First of all, any criminal offense or any offense should not be attributed to any nationality. As for your point of view, you clearly manifested the negative attitude to Roma. Dear colleagues, all the speakers are available for some minutes to you, and I would like to close our press conference. Thank you.